Hello my sorcerers, it's time to embrace the power of music with more cards revealed for Festival of Legend. Apologies in advance that this is combined with yesterday's reveals. This is mainly due to the fact that I've been a little bit busy over the past week and I didn't really have much time to record and edit it in a meaningful time, so we're just going to combine the two. So let's begin with the Druid cards, the first one being Tambourine, which is a 4-cost, 2-attack, 3 durability weapon that has the death rattle. Summon a 1/5/5 ancient. Play cards that cost 5 or more while this is equipped. If this is any indication in some of the tweets that we have seen from some of the Hearthstone devs, we might actually be seeing Treant Druid actually come back from Wild. The only problem I see with that style of deck is the fact that we are going to be losing Guff, which for the most part is a good thing, but if you're not going to be able to get up to 20 mana anymore with a Druid, then cards that rely on you playing a lot of high cost cards aren't always going to be that productive. Sure, this should in theory allow you to actually swarm the board, but unlike some of the other previous weapons, this can only scale up to 7, which makes it a little bit weaker there. Though if you are a token based deck where you're needing some type of late game plan, this might be perfect for that. Outside of this will probably see some play in Ramp Druid, depending on what other support we actually get. Now for the next card, which is going to be Summer Flower Child, which is a 5-cost, 4-attack, 5 HP Druid minion with the battle cry. Draw 2 cards that cost 6 or more. Finale, they cost 1 less. So this in combination with the weapon is actually pretty nice because this will only always draw you cards that will be able to buff that up. And this is essentially 3 charges on that weapon. It is also a little bit of mana cheat, but compared to some of the other mana cheat that Druid has had in the past, I do think this one is a lot more healthy. It could in theory just guarantee you Nourish every single time you do play it down for both copies of that, if Nourish does stick around, or it can guarantee you into some of your key combo pieces such as a New Khan or anything else that is high cost. Now for the next card, which is going to be Drum Circle, a 7-cost nature spell. Choose one. Summon a 5/2/2 Treants, or give your minions 2, 4, and Taunt. Please tell me that Staghelm is actually going to be sticking in rotation. He never got any play during the entire time he was in rotation, since they never supported it. I know mechanic-wise, he's probably the most iconic legendary you could actually have for a choose one Druid deck, but I do think this card is pretty powerful, especially if Staghelm does stick around, because not only are you going to be able to buff up Staghelm, but you will be able to buff up all of the other minions, thus giving you a wide board of 4 6s, which is actually pretty decent in the long run. Oh, and the other thing worth mentioning is we are going to be seeing a buff to the Treants to being 1 cost instead of 2 cost, which is a much needed change and probably should have been done years ago when it comes to Druid, since that is, while not a keyword, one of Druid's iconic mechanics. And who knows, maybe we'll see some Treant related cards in the core set. Alright, now for the Paladin cards, first one being Lead Dancer, a 6-cost, 4-attack, 2 HP minion with Death Rattle. Summon a minion from your deck with less attack than this minion. Now, a lot of the buffs for Paladin are going to be rotating out, such as Invigorating Sermon, which makes this card a little bit worse. However, if you do find ways to buff this up through some of the cards that we got in March of the Lich King, or if there are some buffs cards in this set itself, then this card could be incredibly powerful. Some of the later cards that we will be going over, this card is quite powerful in dragging those out and thus allowing you to mana cheat even further if you do drag any of those out. It will be kind of curious to see if Paladin has a Death Rattle deck, which should be actually the first time that the class has. I think the only other Death Rattle Paladin deck I can think of is the Immortal Palate, or whatever the card was from Rasputin's Rumble, which is a fan favorite, and this is probably going to be a pretty nice deck to try out. Gives some nice variety for Paladin, which historically hasn't been the most variety of a class. Now for the next card, which is legendary, Kangor is returning as the Dance King. He is a 5-cost, 3-attack, 3 HP minion with Lifesteal, Death Rattle. Swap this with a minion in your hand and give it Lifesteal. So, more mana cheat for Paladin, which is a class that doesn't historically have it, and this could in theory replace some of the big Paladin support that we actually are going to be missing once Ultra Rack Valley does rotate out. This card, in combination with any really high cost minions in your hand, basically just allow you to go infinite each time it individually dies, and can easily be dragged out with the previous card that we just went over, thus making this card actually pretty decent in my opinion. It only costs 5, which is pretty cool. It has lifesteal. Giving lifesteal to whatever you're dragging out is probably never going to ever matter in the long run. However, just being able to go infinite with this could in theory be really cool, especially given the next card that got revealed, which is going to be Annoya Troop, a 9 cost, 3 attack, 6 HP mech minion for Paladin, Taunt, Divine Shield, Death Rattle, Summon 3, 1/2 mechs with Taunt and Divine Shield. It's Void Lord all over again, except 3 or 4 years later, and in Paladin. This card is actually incredibly good if you can mana cheat it out, though in modern Hearthstone standards, I don't know how impactful a card like this is going to be, though the previous 2 cards does make getting this out even earlier actually quite consistent, I would say, in Paladin. This is not going to fit in a stereotypical mech Paladin deck because those decks are going to want to swarm the board, and a big minion like that doesn't really help it, even though this could in theory protect your face. You just don't have any ways to play this down most games if you're going to be trying to use it in mech Paladin. I do think a big Paladin deck where we're using a lot of this Death Rattle synergy is probably going to be one of the better decks when it comes to the new Paladin rotation. Right now for the Priest cards, first one being a Druid Boat, a 2 cost, 1 attack, 2 HP Naga minion with Battle Cry. Restore 3 health to all other friendly minions, gain +1/+1 or each one overheal. So if you're playing this in an aggro deck, this is incredibly good because most aggro minions are either going to A, stick to the board where they're going to have full HP, or just instantly be dead. If this is a card that you can just slam down in combination with one of the later cards, then this card is going to be quite powerful, as this could snowball really quickly. It's interesting to see some additional Naga support, even though Naga Priest is a pretty powerful deck. I know it isn't the most meta relevant because of Shadow Priest overshadowing a little bit, but with Shadow Priest probably going to be rotating out, I think a deck centered around Nagas is probably going to be the default Priest deck, depending on what other cards we actually see. Overheal is one of those keywords that can either be really good or really bad. We'll have to see how it plays out in the end, but I don't think it's going to dethrone Overload as the worst class mechanic because it's very easily abusable and makes it actually useful to overheal some of your own minions. Now for the next card, which is going to be Idol's Adorn, a 1 cost, 0 attack, 2 durability weapon. Your hero power costs 0. After you use it, lose 1 durability. I've been seeing some people say this is probably the reason why Archbishop is going to stay in standard rotation. However, at the same time, they are really pushing for overheal, and I don't know if there's going to be enough room in the core set in order to push Shadow Priest 2. It's also cool that this card does confirm that not all of the weapons that we're going to be getting in the set are going to have the Death Rattle synergy. A Blizzard dev did state in one of their tweets that both Mage and Warlock are also going to be very similar to this, because it felt a little bit awkward for all 3 of these classes to hit your opponent's face with some type of weapon. But getting back to this card, this is one that probably will see a lot of play, even if Overheal doesn't see too much play as a Priest deck. This is just a very good generic card and could see even play in Wild, in my opinion, even though I don't play it. Now for the last Priest card revealed today, which is Heartthrob, a 3 cost, 2 attack, 5 HP undead minion. Overheal, summon a random minion with costs equal to the amount overheal. If you have a lot of ways to overheal a lot, this card is incredibly good, but on average this card is probably going to just give you a bunch of 2-drops. But in combination with the previous card, you could go on curve, giving yourself a 3 cost minion and a 2 cost minion on turn 3, which could in theory allow you to overwhelm your opponent depending on how much you can actually overheal outside of just your weapon. Now let's look at some rogue cards. First one is going to be Disc Jockey, which is a 2 cost, 4 attack, 1 HP mech beast combo. Add a random combo card to your hand. Hey, it's our old friend Efficient Octobot back from Wild, even though he just rotated out. The stats are even the reverse of what his normal stat lines were, which were 1/4. He is the original cost of the original Octobot, which it being 2 cost is probably pretty balanced for this card because we don't really have too much of a big payoff for a combo based deck. Ironically, the biggest payoff for a combo rogue deck that we have currently isn't even a combo card itself, which is the location card from Castle Nathria. However, because we no longer have stealth on that card, I don't know how powerful this new combo support is going to be in the end. The pool should be, in theory, small enough where you're going to be able to get the same cards over and over again with a card like this. This reminds me of the Outcast support that we recently saw with the Legendary that gave you a random Outcast card whenever you played them down. However, I do think this one is a lot better because you can A, run 2, and B, can only cost 2 instead of 4, so it'll probably end up seeing some home in a combo rogue deck if there is one. Now for the next card, which is going to be Rhyme Spinner, a 3 cost, 1 attack, 3 HP, rush combo. Game +1/+1 for each other combo card you've played this game. Hey, we're losing the SI7 support in the new rotation, but it looks like combo is just going to replace them right there. It is a little bit of a shame that that deck in particular never got any additional support, but I do think this is a good starter for a new combo based rogue deck. It's always bugged me that combo is one of the least used keywords when it comes to a class mechanic in all of Hearthstone. I think the only thing that outpaces it for not being used is overload, but we'll be seeing a lot of that later on in this video. This card is decent enough that it'll probably see play if there is a critical mass of enough combo minions. We do have a lot of really powerful combo cards that currently exist in Standard, but we don't know what the core set is, so it's going to be a little bit harder to actually tell. If something like Shadow Step does stick around, and then we will probably see a combo rogue be a fully functional deck. But given the next card that was revealed, which is Breakdance, it is a 1 cost shadow spell that returns a friendly minion to your hand. Summon a dancer with its stats and rush. So this is easy removal tools for rogue. However, this does make me think they are finally going to get rid of Shadow Step in Standard Hearthstone. This is a direct replacement for such a card. If you don't get rid of Shadow Step with this card being printed, then while I did complain that combo cards would be really inconsistent, you're just going to have way too many ways to get additional copies of whatever battle cry that you're actually trying to get. This allows you to have both removal and a way to get a duplicate battle cry or a duplicate combo, which is really good without making it give any type of mana cheat, which is a lot healthier for the game. Now for the next card, which is going to bounce around, Feet Grona, which is a 3 cost spell that returns all friendly minions to your hand. They cost 1 this turn. Man, did you complain about Shadow Step? Now you have an AoE Shadow Step. This is a really clear power corrupt version of Tenwu that only bounced back 1 minion for 3, I think it was, and both Vanish. Vanish did allow you to bounce back your opponent. However, this should allow you to use powerful battle cries once again. The first thing that comes to mind with a card like this, you could use it in combination with Astalor. For example, if you did use it with Astalor, you could put down the last version of Astalor down for 8, use Preparation to make this cost 1, then you could use the Astalor you just bounced back to do 14 more damage to your opponent's face if they don't have any type of board placed down. If you have a bunch of really big minions that have a lot of really powerful battle cries, this is an easy way to actually get all of those battle cries off at once again. And this also does rely on the fact that Preparation might stick around for the new rotation. And unlike Shadow Step, we do have screenshots of Preparation with the new rotation icon on the back of the text, which makes me think that the card is probably going to stick around unless that was a temporary visual bug, though I very much doubt it. The one problem with rotating both of those cards out is the cards that have been released in the past year have been balanced around the fact that you have both Shadow Step and Preparation. There are a lot of really high cost spells that will probably not see any play if Preparation does rotate out, and Preparation, generally speaking, is a lot more healthy for the game in my opinion than Shadow Step, even though Shadow Step wasn't really a problem until recently when they started printing a lot more really powerful battle cries that you could easily abuse with it. Either way, if none of these cards do stick around, I do think this card will probably see a lot of play just as a way to get some key combos back online. And now it's time for the Shaman cards. The first one is going to be Inzah, who is a 5 cost, 5 attack, 5 HP Shaman minion with a battle cry. For the rest of your game, your overload cards cost 1 less. Where was this card when we had the quest lines in rotation? Seriously, questline Shaman never got any additional support after the initial set. It's one of only 2 quest lines that didn't get any support after the original set they were released in. The other one being Rogue, which didn't really get any support either. The other problem with a card like this, even though I do think it is incredibly powerful, is the fact that Overload makes it basically where you skip a turn. We are also going to be losing Overdraft in the new rotation, which means you don't have any way to un-overload all of your mana crystals. Unless in the new core set, they include one of the cards that allows you to do so. If they are pushing a Overload Shaman deck, which it seems like they are, I'd be very much shocked if one of those type of cards did not return in the new core set. Now for the next card, which is going to be Jazz Base, a 3-cost, 2 attack, 2 durability weapon. Death Rattle, your next spell costs 1 less. Overload, while equipped, to improve. So this is another good support card for Overload Shaman, and we do have a lot of really high cost overloaded spells within standard rotation right now. Criminal Lineup is the first one that comes to mind. You could also use this in combination with To the Other Side as a way to discount that if you really need to. It has a lot of potential to be really, really powerful. Again, this relies on if we do see a card like Overdraft in the core set once the new rotation actually does happen. Either way, I am actually extremely happy that both Rogue and Shaman's keywords are getting a lot of support. It's been quite a long time since we've seen support for either of those decks, and this should shake up what decks people are going to build with them. This card by itself isn't actually that bad of a card. It is mana cheat, which is always a problem no matter where it is. Speaking of more overloaded cards, the next one is going to be Flow Rida, which is a 2-cost, 3 attack, 2 HP Naga. Battle Cry, if you're overloaded, discover a spell from your deck. So this is targeted discover, which is always really, really good. In theory, you could use it in combination with the previous card where you're just using a bunch of overloaded minions in order to buff up that weapon as much as humanly possible. Then finally finish your opponent off with something like a Alkahir and Criminal Lineup combo where you discounted the Criminal Lineup to a point where it would be absolutely broken. I don't know if that's going to be the strongest way to actually build a deck like that. However, we do have quite a few overloaded minions currently in standard that could make a deck like that function. Now for the next card revealed, which is going to be Altered Chord, a 5-cost nature spell with lifesteal. Deal 5 damage to a minion, cost 3 less if you're overloaded. Decent card for a overload deck. It can't hit your opponent's face, which makes it a little bit worse for that. However, if you are trying to make a overload control deck, I don't know how powerful this card is going to be, unless you have Overdraft as mentioned in the previous 3 cards. Everything relies on Overdraft or a very similar card being in rotation, and with the problem of seeing all of the new cards for the new set before we see the new core set, we don't have any idea of how Blizzard is going to structure that core set, thus we don't really have a good idea of how some of these cards are going to play out. If there are enough overloaded cards in the core set and in this set, which we have seen quite a few, then a card like this is probably pretty easy to get the condition off and is a really good spot removal on turn 2. However, if you are overloaded on turn 2, then you're not going to be able to place this card down, and it's just going to be an even bigger problem. I'm shocked that they didn't make it cost 1 instead of just reducing the cost of it by 3, because if it was any other class, they probably would have. But because it's Shaman, they're being a little bit extra careful. And now for the next Shaman card, which is Pact the House. A 7-cost spell, summon a random 6/5/4/3 cost minion, overload a 2. This is perfect for Evolve Shaman, and most of the Evolve Shaman cards will still be in standard rotation. It's a great tiny toys replacement as it does get you 3 minions. It gives you a nice wide variety of those type of minions, so it is a little bit better there. However, tiny toys did not overload yourself. Again, a card like this makes me assume they're going to probably give us some type of overdraft card in the core set, because this card is completely unplayable if that isn't the case. Alright, now time for the final Shaman card, which is a JIVE Insect, a 5-cost fire spell. Transform a minion into Ragnaros the Fire Lord. Overload a 2. Hey, it's another fire spell in a game where we don't have too many fire spells in rotation right now. at least for Shaman. I think this card is incredibly powerful. Sure, you're going to be overloading by 2, and it does require a minion on board, but being able to get an 8/8 that just does random damage to one of your opponent's minions or their own face could be incredibly powerful. If you can use this in combination with Criminal Lineup and get 4 Ragnaroses out on the same turn, then you're probably just going to be able to OTK your opponent really quickly. This is the payoff that Overload Shaman really did need. The deck was always missing a big win condition, and we are finally seeing some of these really powerful spells that can be used in combination with other ones in order to overwhelm your opponent with these huge minions. Now, the only problem I am seeing with Overload Shaman right now is the fact that there is no Overdraft card or another card that will unlock your mana crystals. If we see one of those cards in the core set, this card will be great. If not, I think this is probably the one that has the most possibility of actually seeing a lot of play. Now, let's go to the Warlock card. Rin is making a return, and boy does she look demonic here. Rin, the Orchestrator of Doom, is a 5-cost legendary minion for Warlock with 3 attack, 6 HP, Taunt, Death Rattle. Both players draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and destroy the top 2 cards of their deck. So, it looks like we're going to try to go down the discard Warlock path again, or this is going to be a one-off card because this was the only Warlock card revealed in this batch. It makes me wonder if they realize discard Warlock after March of the Lich King really needed 1 or 2 more cards. However, the cards that the discard Warlock deck really needed weren't cards that discard more cards, it was cards that did something when you discarded them, which means a card like this isn't really that good in that type of deck either. The other decks that I could maybe see this fitting in is something like Questline Warlock, however, that is also going to be rotating out. You could have also used it in combination with Phylactrophy, which is rotating out. The issue with this card is it is a little bit too late for a lot of the uses that most people are going to want to use it in, and because of that, I don't know how playable this card is going to be. Alright, so those were all the cards revealed today and yesterday. Let me know down below which ones you're most looking forward to actually using. There's actually a nice wide variety of decks that are being supported, and I can't wait to test them all out. Like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye.